In the holistic world, we're not anti anything, we're pro body. We want to understand the why behind every symptom, every reaction, every sickness. Dr. Harmon and I have spent a lot of time discussing today's episode. We wanted to give you alternative options to the normal programmed 3, 6, 9, 12-month well baby visits. That's the kind of health we're here for. Informed, empowered, rooted in the truth.
Welcome to Root Cause Holistic Health. I'm Dr. John Harmon, physician, brain health expert, and your host on this no-fluff journey into whole body healing.
And I'm Tracey, wellness coach, mom, and co-host. This is the space where we get real about what actually heals, not just what's trending.
If you're done with surface level advice and ready to understand your body, your mind, and your health from the inside out, this podcast is for you.
We're here for the raw conversations most people avoid. We don't sugarcoat, we don't shame. We offer tools, truths, and transformation.
Welcome back. Today we're talking about what to do if you decide not to go to the well baby visits. Dr. Harmon, since you were a physician for so many years, and of course in chiropractic care, why don't you kick it off and talk about the importance of infants going to the chiropractor, why it's so important, and when they should go?
Very, very good question. And since I'm the father of 10 children and 27 grandchildren, part of what I'm about to tell you is personal experience, but 99% of that has nothing to do with me and my experiences. It's just the facts about the nervous system. So a baby's, comes through the birth canal and it's quite traumatic. Sometimes the trauma is actually induced by the obstetrician during the delivery. Maybe he or she is in a hurry and wants to get this done and over with. So we'll grab a hold of that skull of the head of the baby and pull. Okay, out comes the shoulder, and then pull the other direction and pull. Or they have a suction cup. The baby is suctioned out. And I'll never forget when I was in my obstetrics and gynecology class in chiropractic college. We have to learn all of those things because we have to know how to do anything that is included in any of the state's scope of practice. And in some states, chiropractors can deliver babies. So we went through all of that, and we had to learn these things. And I'll never forget, there were two videos side by side on this large screen in this big amphitheater at my school. And there was one side was the doctor was basically there to assist and to help the membrane stretch, use lubricant to help that baby just come out on its own. And the other one was episiotomy, get the head out, pull, snap, here comes that shoulder. And then the other direction, that shoulder comes out. And to me, it was horrible to watch the difference in just the technique. When you look at that and you see the trauma that an infant can go through, and I can tell you some of the most almost spiritual, very touching experiences I had when I was doing chiropractic were with these days old or hours old infants.
I love that.
Some of my patients had me come into the hospital to adjust them, and it's a very gentle adjustment. It's nothing, big twisting of the neck or anything. But the main focus for me was the atlas, which is the number one top vertebra. And the reason we focus on that is because the vagus nerves literally come out of some holes in the bottom of the skull, and they lie on the front aspect of that first bone called the atlas. So if there's twisting going on, one vagus nerve will have pressure on it, and the other one will have traction on it. That affects many things, not the least of which is digestion, but also sleep, also immune function. But then the other aspect of that twisting of that top vertebrae is that On the very lateral aspect of that, the outside, there are little holes in the bone in that C1 segment. The motion at that segment or misalignment becomes very important because of the fact that the circulation to the brain, and granted, it's only 2/5 of the circulation to the brain, there are different routes to get there. However, when we naturally turn our head, one of those artery gets totally occluded or blocked.
Oh,
So it's natural, and you have multiple routes to get up there. When you turn it the other way, the other one gets blocked because of the 90-degree angles there at that segment. Okay, so if I have a misalignment that's already blocking one, and then I turn my head and it blocks the other, that's not good.
no.
That's not good. You have decreased circulation to the brain. So you have a situation where a misalignment just at that one segment can cause problems in vagal tone, or the parasympathetic nervous system can be dysfunctional. And I've had people bring their little infants into my office, and they're just screaming and crying. They say they're really colicky, and they're spitting up, and we're not getting any sleep. And basically the attitude was, if you can't fix this thing, I don't want it back. they're at their wits' end. 3 weeks have gone by or whatever. And another aspect to this is they will have poor muscle tone. The tone to all of their muscles they'll just be floppy because of the lack of neurological input to their musculoskeletal system. What does that mean? Well, they'll have poor tone in the sphincter muscle that holds things down into the stomach, and they'll be constantly spitting up. When we say take your baby in to the chiropractor, we're not talking about just pain that causes an infant to cry all the time. They can't talk, so they cry. They are in pain. We don't know what's wrong. They're inconsolable. They cry so much that their stomach gets upset and then they spit up, or they have poor muscle tone and they spit up, or their nervous system is just totally out of whack and they can't digest. Then let's talk about the big C word. What stops cells that have mutated and are going on a different course into fast-growing cells? We call the big C word. Now, I'm not saying that chiropractic adjustments cure cancer or any such thing. What I am saying, if your immune system, yours or your infant's immune system, is being inhibited, the very army of soldiers, your immune cells, the killer cells, that's what they do. That's why they call them killer cells. We all develop cancer at some point, but our immune system takes care of business. So if your parasympathetic nervous system is under functioning, that means digestion is under functioning, immune function is under functioning, you have poor vagal tone, poor response to stress. That means your body can't handle the oxidative stress that we all go through. So does a lack of being adjusted cause cancer? No. What it does, if your immune system is under functioning or dysfunctioning because of spinal misalignment, that means the nerves to those areas are not functioning, and you don't have good communication for all of the army to go out and take care of business for you. You want to have a hearty response, and you want your immune system functioning properly because it's the thing that controls the killing of the things that aren't supposed to be there. When we say get your baby adjusted, part of it is, making sure that they're not in pain, but 90% of it is not that. That's how important it is.
Well, you painted such a graphic picture. I almost had PTSD from having Bella naturally 18 years ago, of her going through the birth canal. I mean, it is traumatic for babies to
Yeah,
go through the birth canal. And unless you stop and think about it, you don't realize, yeah, their spine's definitely not aligned. And I don't think people understand how important it is for their spine to be aligned, for them to be healthy. They need their spine to be aligned. It goes hand in hand with gut health. And I don't think people understand that correlation. You know what I mean? How important that is. And especially later on down the road, let's say you have a 2 or 3 year old that has ear infections or things going on with their ears. The first thing, I'm in a ton of mommy groups, and the first thing that I say to moms in these mommy groups that, their kids have chronic ear infections or, this, that, or the other, first thing, have they been to the chiropractor? No. That's your first stop. And then the second stop.
absolutely.
Then your second stop is an HMAth. But can we go into that a little bit? If you don't get your baby adjusted as soon as you can, what could happen? Like we talked about ear infections. What are other possibilities that could happen when you fast forward to a toddler if they don't get adjusted at birth?
Well, yeah, the longer you can look at the spine as a green sprout of a tree, that you plant the seed, it starts to come up. You can bend that a lot of different directions. And if it stays that way, what does it look like? It looks all bent up.
Mm-hmm.
And now as the infant grows, if you have full neurological function, everything works better, including the immune system I just talked about. Everything works better. The muscles work better. So there are spinal nerves that go to muscles. And if you don't have good connections, some muscles are getting too much input and others are not getting enough. So now the baby doesn't have good coordination. There are certain milestones that need to be met. If they're not met at the right time, they can cause lots of problems later on in life. I wanted to talk about one experience, and this is kind of how it goes when someone would bring their infant to me. One of my grandkids was born a few years back, and they lived an hour away. And, after you have a baby, it's kind of hard to travel. And so I think 3 or 4 days went by, and they called and said, man, Addison is just fussy all the time. She doesn't look well. She won't move one of her arms. She could move one of them, but the other one was just kind of there. And we said, bring her down. Good heavens, don't wait.
Mm-hmm.
I brought her in, and I have a little instrument, did a little adjustment on her atlas, and then her collarbone was misaligned. And that happens a lot during birth because of the shoulder slipping out and the collarbone. So
Yeah.
I adjusted her, and it was even difficult to describe the transformation. She didn't even look like the same child.
I bet.
She started using her arm. It was amazing. And I used to hold the infant by the legs and hang them upside down. They like being upside down, by the way. They were that way for 9 months. And hold them
Oh,
up.
yeah.
If their atlas is out of alignment, their head would turn when they were down there because obviously it was more comfortable. If they didn't, then the head would stay straight. And it was pretty accurate too. I learned that in a women, infant, children postgraduate courses. So I would hold her up, and sure enough, it twisted when we started, and then it was good. Those experiences, if a parent could just see one little glimpse of that, they would understand how important it is. We didn't go to all of the well baby checks because I knew what they were for. The well baby checks, you don't need to go in every couple of months for 99% of the kids, but the reason there's a well baby check is so that they can give your child vaccines. They do the measurement, and if the child is a little bit delayed, then they'll tell you that. And if it's, you're in the 99th percentile, whatever it is, cool. But most kids don't need to do that. they go in and then they get these just overload of all of these toxins and mercury and aluminum and all of those things at those visits. The doctors aren't taught what's in the vaccine. They're just taught the schedule.
And during our research, I learned that 70% of the immune system lives in the gut, even for babies. So, what are all those ingredients doing to the microbiome of the baby at the very beginning?
Wiping it out, unfortunately.
Completely wiping it out. And the gut is so important. Everything starts in the gut. And I think people are just now understanding how important it is to eat real food. And we've talked about bioengineered ingredients a lot. I talk about that a lot. And I think every day I talk about it to somebody, somewhere. People don't understand when you flip over the bag of Doritos or the bag, anything, candy, gum, and it says now made with bioengineered ingredients. I don't think people understand what that means.
No.
Forever chemicals that we cannot process. I firmly believe, Dr. Harmon, I firmly believe that in the next 5-10 years, in our lifetime, while we're here, I firmly believe we are going to see a huge onset of appendectomies, people having kids, younger and younger, having their gallbladders out, liver issues, because they're stuck with forever chemicals that we cannot process.
Yes. They made the name sound kind of cool, though, didn't they?
Bioengineered ingredients.
Bioengineered. It must be better than nature because we did it in the lab. It's kind of comical, but tragic because they sneak it in. And my wife likes this salsa from Albertsons. They make it there on site. And one time, it was a few months ago, because I'm a label reader and she isn't as much as I am. And I flipped it over and I looked at it and I said, "Hey, babe, did you know that this has bioengineered ingredients?" And she looked at me, "No, I haven't checked the label in a while." And we stopped buying it.
It sucks. Yeah.
It really does. And you don't even know which ones they are.
No, we're getting to where we can taste it now. A few episodes back, I talked about going on a road trip with my parents and we always stop at the same gas station and we get licorice. And I remember I was driving and my mom was in the back seat and I remember giving my mom the licorice and she opened it up and Dr. Harmon, it smelled like Roundup.
Oh my gosh.
And she turned it over and she's like, "Trace, it says bioengineered ingredients." I was like, "Oh, I'm throwing it away." So her favorite licorice that we used to eat every time I'd come to Idaho and drive up the mountain, we would eat licorice on the road trip. No longer.
And so at this point, I think it's important for our listeners to understand what bioengineered means. So all wrapped up in that bioengineered food, those two words, you can actually insert, if you could, open up that word and in between everything, you could say, well, we engineered the seeds, the organism, so it can't reproduce, so it's sterile. And we also engineered it to make its own pesticide to fight off, bugs. Mm. And we also engineered it so it won't die when we spray Roundup on it. So we can kill all the weeds because we get a higher yield.
Right.
Also wrapped up in that is these plants don't have to build their defenses against bugs, against invaders, against weeds, so they become really weak. And they're missing a lot of the nutrients that necessitated, shall we say, they needed to become hardy plants that had the capability of withstanding the onslaught from mold, from other, insects, weeds. When we eat organic food, those things are in that plant. We get them when we eat them. So now these bioengineered foods are sterile, lack the nutrition, but they have bulk. And then we get Roundup.
It just makes my stomach hurt. I breastfed Bella until she was 3. And I think that's important that moms know I still, all these years, 18 years later, they said breast is best. I still agree with that because you get so much nutrients from mom. And then when you start introducing foods to toddlers, it should be the healthy stuff. It should be fruits and vegetables, fermented food, bone broth, healthy stuff. not processed foods and candies and chips.
Well, now that you're talking about breastfeeding, it's almost like an alien, a space movie about some fantasy somebody had. So when mom is nursing, here's what her body does. Okay, guys, what we're going to do, we're going to upload this L. reuteri bacteria that needs to go to the baby. We're going to take it into the bloodstream, and we're going to open up the door on the red blood cells, and we're going to store it in there so we can transport all of the good guys up into the milk ducts through our circulatory system, and then we're going to let them out and let them get into the milk ducts so the baby gets it. That's how the baby gets the proper gut bacteria. That's one of the coolest things I've ever heard of.
Actually, Dr. Harmon, that's a really good point. For the moms out there, it starts before the baby's even born, right? So your gut health and nutrient stores during pregnancy. So then, like you said, when you're breastfeeding, it totally sets the stage for the baby's microbiome. Okay, so we've talked about gut health, we talked about immune health, chiropractic care. Let's touch on functional medicine doctors. Like we've discussed in the past, I was new to the naturopath world until Bella was 7. So I didn't learn what a naturopath was until just, 10, 11 years ago. And then after I learned about naturopath, then I learned functional medicine doctor. So let's talk about options. Moms, dads decided they don't want to go to the traditional pediatrician well baby visit route. They're looking for alternative care. So another option is functional medicine doctor.
So what are the options for moms who are nervous about the well baby visits? Where would we recommend you take your infant? Find a good functional medicine doctor. Now, there are some chiropractors who have expanded out into functional medicine, so that is also an option where you could get the baby adjusted, but also look at other things. And then a very, very important thing to remember, if you or your children have ever had antibiotics,
Oh, yeah.
you do not have L. reuteri. Some people call it L. reuteri. It's Lactobacillus reuteri or reuteri. It's a German word, and I speak German, so to me it's reuteri. So this bacteria is so important in the gut. Look it up. It's easy to look up, and Dr. William Davis has written a book called Supergut, and he talks about this part of your microbiome in the gut. Very, very important to have this L. reuteri, and that's the one you get from mama. And so if you've ever had antibiotics, you don't have that in your gut. It can cause things from, stomach gas to anxiety and depression if you don't have that. Remember, the bacteria in our gut secrete and produce neurotransmitters. And another thing to remember is the bacteria in your gut tell you what they want to eat so that you consume it. If you're craving sugar, look to the gut. You have bacteria that want sugar. And they tell you through communicating through your nervous system, hey, this is what I'm ordering. You better eat it. So keep that in mind. Dr. William Davis has a book called Supergut. Highly recommend it. He shows you how to make that L. reuteri at home. I do it myself. It's very easy to do. We'll have a link to his video showing people how to make that and give him credit for what he's done in bringing awareness to this very important aspect of gut health, is having that bacteria that we were supposed to get through mom in the way that I just explained a few minutes ago, where it's stored in the red blood cells. That's like sci-fi stuff. So functional medicine, they'll look at other things that are going on, the nutrition of your baby, the structure of the spine, which structure gives function. And so if things are out of alignment, the function is not good, and then your nervous system's going to be affected.
What's the right age for muscle testing?
Well, if people aren't familiar with surrogate testing, they'll think it's kind of weird, but I did it in my office all the time. So I will use the mother while she holds the baby. They are so connected. They're in the same energetic field, and you can get a lot of information by testing the mom
Oh,
instead of the
wow.
infant. And I did that in my office when I'm testing these autistic kids who came into the office. And it was always from, when a mom brings the child in, I don't know what their thoughts are about the vaccines, and I would tell them what causes brain issues. There's head trauma, there's emotional trauma, and then I would say chemical exposure. Some children do not respond well to the heavy metals, the toxins in those vaccines. Without exceptions, the mom would say, I know it was from that. My child hasn't been the same since they got those vaccines. And
Breaks your heart.
it breaks my heart.
Yep, breaks your heart.
Yeah,
Because and you can, I've done so much research now, I can see it in kids' eyes. I mean, the ones that are full of chemicals that have
absolutely.
that something has altered their brain, that the chemicals that have been introduced to their poor little systems that absolutely shouldn't have. My experience with muzzle testing with Bella when she was 7 and she had a headache for a year, and we had gone to 13 different doctors, ENTs, dentists, neurologists. I mean, the gamut. We went through every doctor you could think of, had little cameras put up her nose and all kinds of stuff. She had a headache for a year every day. Went to a naturopath, which we'll talk about next. Went to a naturopath, and he muscle tested Bella. And Dr. Harmon, had I not been there, I don't know that I would have believed this, because
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
raised very traditional. I went to the well baby visits, with the exception of my godfather was a chiropractor, and we'd gone back and forth to the chiropractor very sporadically, a couple times a year. Yeah, my mom was very adamant about getting us into the pediatrician. We went to her well baby visits. I remember them. So when Bella was 7, had a headache, all the doctors, I finally found naturopath, doctor number 14. He literally laid her down on a table, and he had all different kinds of vials on the wall, different ingredients. And he just grabbed one vial. The first one was corn, and he put the little vial right above her forehead. He didn't touch her. He put the vial literally right above her little forehead. Dr. Harmon, her little forehead twitched with just a corn vial right above it. And she
Wow.
goes, that hurts. And he goes, okay. And he set that down. Then he grabbed the egg vial, put it right above her head. Same thing. And she goes, Mom, that hurts. Her little forehead twitched. And he goes, okay, corn and egg. And I remember going, what do you mean corn and egg? What does this mean? And he said, she has a food sensitivity to corn and eggs. And it was what we were feeding her. I was giving her chocolate milk every morning, the high fructose corn syrup in it. So the very next day
Oh,
that I didn't give her chocolate milk, because she was 7. So I breastfed her till she was 3, and she didn't like cow's milk, straight up. We called it straight up white milk. She didn't like that. She wanted chocolate milk. So from 3 until 7, she had chocolate milk every morning.
oh gosh.
And her poor little body couldn't handle it. She ended up with leaky gut, and her symptoms to the leaky gut was a headache. And then we found out, that it was caused by corn and egg. And so thankfully, I found the naturopath. We did the muscle testing, and then he put her on a probiotic and some supplements. We cleaned up her leaky gut and ate really, really good for a few months. And, she was fine. After that, she could eat whatever she wants and no more headaches. It was actually the next day, she didn't have a headache because I didn't give her chocolate milk. So when people hear me talk about ingredients, that's the backstory. That's why I'm adamant about ingredients, because it was so life-changing for me, giving my daughter chocolate milk every day that gave her a headache, to the very next day not giving her something that was causing her pain. I mean, talk about heartbreaking. You know what I mean? You don't know that. And I had no idea what muscle testing was.
I do know what you mean.
Another thing that was interesting with that visit with the naturopath, when we realized that Bella had an egg food sensitivity, the first question that the naturopath asked me, he said, Tracey, is Bella fully vaccinated? And I said, she's not. She had a very slight, I mean, it wasn't slight to me. 104 fever and a big swollen, leg was not a slight vaccine injury. I'm thankful that was all that was. But after that, I was done. I didn't want any more vaccines. And I said, no, she's not fully vaccinated. Why? He said, you saved your daughter, most likely saved your daughter from a lifetime of migraines because egg protein is an ingredient in vaccines. Your daughter has a food sensitivity to egg proteins. She wouldn't have been able to handle those vaccines. They most likely would have given her lifetime migraines.
And when I hear that, when he told you that, I think about all of the moms who are never told that.
No, I talked about this morning. I was thinking, I have a friend of mine that is introducing, she texts me, she has a baby and, they're a toddler, they're introducing new foods, right? Okay, one at a time. And it got me thinking, they're so adamant on introducing one food at a time in case your baby's allergic. And the first thing that I thought of was Bella being allergic to eggs, and eggs are in vaccines. How do we know what our kids are allergic to? All these ingredients in these vaccines. What right do these doctors have to inject our babies with ingredients that we don't know that they can handle or not? I mean, it actually makes me mad. I was actually really mad this morning thinking you're told to introduce one food at a time because they might be allergic. Well, are you really? We're introducing 72 doses of what? We don't know if they're allergic to all of these things. And egg protein being one of them, it could have really harmed my daughter. I take that very personal as a mom. Like you said, you're not aware. You don't know. And it makes me very angry that I didn't know that. And moms don't know that.
Yes. And then they shame mothers. You're going to kill your baby. Your baby's going to get this disease. They shame the moms into compliance, and it's horrible and tragic.
I mean, it was just crazy to me, Dr. Harmon.
Here's your medicine. Stop doing something.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you were saying, let's talk about the corn.
That's such a prevalent ingredient in things, high fructose corn syrup. Well, all wrapped up in that is the following. You should consider the following information. Most corn in the U.S. is GMO, genetically modified organism, corn.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? That means that it gets sprayed with glyphosate, keep the weeds away. It means that it was genetically modified to be sterile, so that you have to buy your seeds as a farmer. You have to buy them every year. You can't get your own seeds. So in addition to that, they spray glyphosate on the products, on the produce, to dry it out so they can process it faster. So high fructose corn syrup, it's not just about the sugar. It's about getting glyphosate in there. Glyphosate breaks the bonds that hold your gut lining cells together and causes leaky gut. What does that mean? Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you had a strainer, a colander, and you're making noodles, and none of the noodles can fit through the little holes. But let's say that you took a hammer and pounded out part of that plastic, and now you're trying to drain the noodles, and all of the noodles go through that hole. That would be similar to your gut lining. It's supposed to keep things out of your bloodstream that aren't fully digested. If you have gaps or holes caused by glyphosate, big particles of food go through into your bloodstream. And I think the limit is called, there's a unit of measurement for on the atomic level. They're called Daltons. I think the largest that anything should be is about 6,500 Daltons. Now you get things that are much larger. That triggers an immune response. That triggers your immune cells saying, attack. That dude's not supposed to be here. Let's
Yep.
attack that as a foreign invader, and now it makes an antibody for it. And every time you eat that broccoli or whatever it is, you'll get that response, that immune response. And so this is one of the reasons these infants have gut issues in addition to the vaccines, but these genetically modified ingredients, and moms will read high fructose corn syrup on the formula and think, well, they need to get some carbohydrates. Well,
Mm-mm.
that
No.
starts a whole series of events, unfortunately.
So let's touch on the difference between a naturopath doc and functional medicine doc.
The lines are getting a little more blurred. Find yourself a doc you trust, either a naturopath. Here in Idaho, there are different licensures. There's naturopathic medical doctor, and then there are naturopaths. And you go to the one that you feel comfortable with. Find somebody, interview them, ask around. Your baby's going to be safe, and moms are not going to go through the pressure of trying to get your baby vaccinated when you go to most of them. Functional medicine docs may still be medically oriented, but most are probably alert and aware of the harm that can come from those vaccines and more oriented to management of those infections. They're not diseases, they're infections that last usually 7 to 10 days. 99.9%, as we talked about before, survivability. So with proper management, you can navigate through these childhood infections and come out stronger. When our immune systems overcome something, we trained it, and now it's a better immune system.
So I guess at the end of the day, chiropractic care, absolutely. Like every baby, as soon as they're born, as soon as you possibly can, chiropractic care.
Yes.
And then some sort of functional medicine, naturopathic, like you said, those lines have gotten blurred. Even some chiropractors are doing blood work now, and they're expanding into alternative care.
Yeah.
So finding a doc that you trust that can do a well baby visit without doing the inoculations, I think is key. You have options. Like I said before, I didn't even know that what a functional medicine doctor was until just a few years ago. So I think having options for moms is awesome. Another doc that I'd like to point out is a biological dentist, because there is a difference between dentists and biological dentists.
Oh, yeah. So here are things to consider. So the traditional dentistry, they drill a hole, they put a filling on it. A lot of times the filling is amalgam. What is that? Well, that's mercury and silver. So now we have mercury in our mouth that's leaking, and it's right up by our brain.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Right.
Don't get those. Any of those. Do not get amalgam. Dentists can't publicly speak out and say that amalgams are dangerous, or they will lose their license.
Unbelievable.
That's how closely it's protected. So consider this. When you go to a biological dentist that uses ozone for sanitation, when you go in, they will have you gargle and rinse 15 times with ozone water. What does that do? One molecule of ozone can kill 3,500 bacteria in 1 second.
Wow.
So they have you gargle it and rinse with that so that your mouth, is more sterile. And then when they drill the tooth, the cavity, before they put that filling in that's not amalgam, they sanitize it with ozone gel.
Mm-hmm.
So that they're not locking bacteria underneath the filling. Biological dentists have told me, yeah, I'll take out, somebody else's filling, and there's all kinds of infection growing underneath the filling. And so this is one of the importance, this is part of how important it is to go to a biological dentist. Next on this topic, never get a root canal.
Never.
Root canal. A dentist gave me a root canal without my permission when I was under conscious sedation. It nearly killed me because I got a bone infection. I was out for 2.5 months. I could not come to work. I had a PICC line, and my wife had to put 60 cc's of antibiotics in there every day to save my life
Oh my gosh.
from a root
Awful.
canal.
Yep.
Root canals can cause horrible, horrible things. The husband of a friend of mine, bragged about not going to a dentist for 40 years. He had a root canal 40 years prior, and that motivated him to not ever go to a dentist again. The tooth was black.
Mm-hmm.
The two teeth next to it were infected, and he got Guillain-Barré syndrome from it, which is
Oh my God.
when the insulation comes off the nerves. He couldn't feel or move his legs.
Oh my
Root
gosh.
canals are horrible. Don't get a root canal. Have the tooth pulled
Yep.
and get a zirconium implant, not titanium. Titanium sets up a charge in your mouth where zirconium does not. So those are some of the options. Biological dentist, you're going to be far better for you than the traditional dentist that uses amalgams and doesn't pay any attention to doing root canals.
Side note, because we're talking about root canals, and I have a lot of experience in this. Since we're an educational channel, I like to educate as, whenever I can, right? And little tidbits. If you do have root canals, please go get a thermography scan, because you may not have any pain. You may not have any symptoms. You could have an infection brewing somewhere deep down in the bottom of a root canal. You don't even know it. Please go get a thermography scan, and then go get a cone beam scan. Those are two things that I recommend to everybody listening.
Yes.
Please, if you have root canals, those two things that you need to go today. You need to make the phone call today and get those appointments as soon as you possibly can. You could actually save your life. I mean, that sounds
Tracey,
dramatic, but it's not. I'm not being dramatic. I mean, it's actually life-threatening.
Tracey, do you want to talk about what that thermography does?
It can find infections they don't even know you have. It can help find breast cancer. There's all kinds of things it does.
Yeah. So it's looking for heat. So
Yep.
areas of infection or cancer
Yep.
have a higher metabolic rate. You'll see these areas of excess heat, and you won't notice it because they're subtle and they can pick up things that you might not find until you have something really serious.
All right, let's talk about germs for a minute, because I know there's so many. I know when I was a new mom, I wanted to keep Bella in a bubble. I didn't want her to get dirty. I joked about keeping her in a bubble all the time. And my mother-in-law raised chickens. I think at one time they had like 30 chickens. And we would go to my in-laws' house every Sunday for dinner. And my toddler was out there playing with the chickens. Her and her cousin, they named them. They named all the chickens, so they knew all of them, right?
I
It was
love it.
super, super, super cute. Well, Bella was probably 2 or 3, and she learned a valuable lesson with hand washing. So she had been out with the chickens, and I remember she must have been 2 because she was little, it was really tiny, and she'd fallen on the concrete, and then she got up and she put her hand in her mouth. Well, when you're playing with chickens and you put your hand in your mouth, what do you think is going to happen? She threw up. So she then correlated at a very young age dirty hands with getting sick.
Interesting.
So as a teenager now, she's probably the only teenager, and you've heard me say this before, she's the only teenager that I would actually take food from. Like, I would trust her cooking. I would trust if she handed me a carrot or something, I would take it from her. She'd always have clean hands. She's got really, really clean hands. But that started from when she was little. She correlates dirty hands with throwing up.
Pretty smart.
And I don't think that a lot of moms think that through when they're little. You've got your kids crawling all over the floor. Let's teach them as they're learning to crawl, all right, let's go wash the hands, like really good hand washing. And then every time before you touch a piece of food, put it in your mouth. I fly a lot. So I see people go through the gross airport scanners and then the airport, and then they get on the plane, they're just eating food. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you know what you've touched? Do you know what you've come in contact? Now you're putting all of that into your mouth? Just disgusting.
Well, there's the other side of that as well. Your baby's crawling around on the floor. And an interesting fact about immune systems and allergies, if a family has 2 pets, not just one, 2 pets, they have a far decreased chance of having allergies when they grow up.
I did not know that.
Think about that. Also, those things on the floor, the baby's touching them, putting it in their mouth. It's actually training the immune system. It's kind of like, starting out with just the things in my house and putting their hands in their mouth. They grab everything and put it in their mouth. And part of it, the reason for that is so that they can train the immune system with a lot of these innocuous things. The body has to get used to fighting things first. Now, if you're around chickens, you got a bigger problem, with salmonella and different things. Yes. But in your house, they should be crawling around on the floor and getting exposed to all of these things that they're going to have to deal with. You can't sanitize. It's worse when they grow up in a sanitized environment because their immune system doesn't learn how to take care of business.
Mm-hmm. So another alternative, instead of running to the doctor at every sniffle, is just or trying to prevent the sniffle. Actually, no, rewind. I think that learning to be a good hand washer is the base of staying healthy and keeping you out of the doctor's office, right? And the other things that I think get overlooked a lot, Dr. Harmon, I think people don't understand the importance of sleep for toddlers and schedules. We're under a lot of stress as adults. I was doing some research for this topic when I was looking for alternatives to, vaccinations, because that's what we're talking about. What else can I do if I don't do these vaccines because I've been told that my baby needs vaccines to stay healthy? What else can I do to build their immune system? And one of the things I came across was a lot of toddlers are in fight or flight all day. And I didn't realize that, toddlers, especially in today's world, they're going to school at, 5 years old. And look at the world we live in now with the threats and everything that they have to deal with at school and all the drills that they have to go through, the fire drills and the other drills, you know what I mean? So these poor toddlers, they're stuck in fight or flight all day. And then their immune system can't do their job.
Yeah, that's true. So what is the remedy for that?
I think home should be base. Home should be calm. There's and I think it's hard in today's world, but the screen time. I think all these kids at young age, starting with the screen time. Gosh, I don't know the studies later on, what's going to happen to kids with their, brain function and nervous system and their eyes and everything when they start using a screen at 2 years old. I think it's just going to be such a detriment to our kids later on in life having screens so early.
Yeah, because that's a dopamine hit. Every time there's a ding or a flash or looking at that, no child under the age of 3 should be having a tablet, any kind of screen that they're holding. And that right there is part of the problem with our society today.
Mm-hmm.
Is the excess dopamine all day long, those dopamine hits, and then it starts to affect our sleep. But also it trains us in a very harmful way. But for children, it's much, much worse because up until the age of 2, the right side of the brain is much more active than the left side of the brain, because the right side of the brain is for processing facial decoding, looking at facial expressions and learning the correlation between those expressions on the face that are associated with certain emotions. And we call it mirroring, but also they're mimicking, and we do it as humans anyway. When we meet somebody new, our face for a split second duplicates their expression. It mirrors their expression. Why? Because certain expressions are directly tied to certain emotions. That's why you can look at somebody's face and you can tell what emotion that they have, they're experiencing.
Right.
So we mimic that so that we know what we're dealing with. We don't do it. We don't know, but we do that. And so that comes from the right side of the brain. Right side of the brain controls the large muscles. Little infants need to learn how to develop their core strength, their big muscles, not their little tiny muscles in their index finger.
Right,
Working
right.
the screen. That comes
No.
from the left side of the brain. Attention comes from the right side of the brain, except for one type of attention, and that is up close with a tablet using your finger to scroll through things. Left side of the brain. So the right side of the brain is supposed to be a lot more active than the left side of the brain. It's colors, big muscle movement, attention, facial decoding, social engagement, social rules. Those types of things are what these little toddlers need to learn. If they turn on the left side of the brain too early, those things get left behind, never to be recaptured. They get left behind. So this is one of the causes of ADHD. Autism is a much worse but similar problem. And if you look at autistic kids, people say, but Johnny's really smart. Yeah, he's really smart, but socially inept, socially incapable of
Hmm.
engaging with the children their age. Why? Because they didn't learn social rules. They didn't learn
Hmm.
how to read, facial expressions. So they're socially awkward. So a 10-year-old, let's take a 10-year-old, fourth grade, ADHD or autistic. An autistic kid can be 4 years ahead in math, but 4 years behind socially. How does that play out
Hmm.
in the fourth grade? So
Yep.
acting like a
Yeah.
6-year-old, but doing math like a 14-year-old.
Right,
The
right.
teacher said, I know he's really smart because I've seen him do his work. Why can't he understand word problems? And why can't he get along with people? And why can't he pay attention? Because attention comes from the right side of the brain, except for one. And parents are creating this by giving their child a tablet or having it a badge of honor that my child was reading chapter books when he was 6 years old. One of the worst things you can do for a child. And
Oh my
we as
gosh.
parents, we think it's great. We also try to
Right.
teach our child to walk early, which is also bad because that also develops the left side of the brain way too early. I know we've talked about that before, but it's worth repeating
Hmm.
because it's so prevalent and heartbreaking to me when I see parents walking around the mall or at the airport and they have their child in a stroller with a tablet.
Hmm. Oh, me too.
It breaks my heart, really.
Yep. Yep. Me too. You mentioned something that I want to go back on because I know we talked about it in another episode, but I want to bring it up here. You talked about facial recognition, and I immediately thought of a newborn. So if that newborn had erythromycin smeared all over their eyes, like my poor Bella did, and then Bella had an allergic reaction, I didn't think about that, Dr. Harmon. So I have Bella. She gets slathered with erythromycin. She's
Yeah.
like Vaseline stuff all over her eyes. She can't see me. She can't see the
No,
facial recognition.
no.
And isn't
It's
that where bonding starts? I
yes,
mean,
it's tragic. Mama and child need to stare at each other in the eyes and bond and they imprint with mama. That's where the initial bonding comes from. And they rob parents of that. One more thing while we're on this topic. Before you go in for the birth of your child, you need to have this conversation with your obstetrician.
yes.
Are you going to snip the cord so that you can go to your golf game? I want you to leave the umbilical cord attached until it turns grayish.
Great point.
All of the billions of stem cells that are supposed to go into my baby, but the hospital snips it and sells them,
Mm.
need to go into my child to repair what I just went through coming through that birth canal. I want you
Mhm.
to leave it on. Will you agree to do that? That is a conversation that needs to be had with before any birth because that's not it, snip, tie, and it's just routine. They don't even think about that.
Mm-mm. I feel like we could do a whole episode on birth plan. I mean, there's so many things that I didn't know being a mom 18 years ago. I mean, sure, it's all changed now, but that's one of them. Never ever crossed my mind. I never had a conversation about it, didn't even know about it.
Yeah, it's horrible.
What I would do different now, 18 years later, and all the research, what I would do different, I would have not gotten an epidural. I was in labor downstairs when my husband brought me into the hospital. In fact, Dr. Harmon, we were watching a Boise State game because it's October. So I had already, I probably would have had her, went into labor at 7 p.m. I probably would have had her at midnight. When I got to the hospital, I was already crowning. And then shortly after midnight, the anesthesiologist gave me the epidural and it stopped everything in its tracks. And I didn't have her and I labored until 7 in the morning. So I would definitely not have the epidural. And then I would have a very, very, very long conversation with my team, my OB, the nurses, everybody that's going to be there that day. Make sure my husband, knew exactly what I wanted in case,
Yeah.
I wasn't conscious or anything. The birth plan, very written out, exactly like you said. No erythromycin, absolutely no vitamin K, no anything, no heel prick, none of that. That stuff I didn't even know about. It should have been talked about in my OB visits, and it wasn't.
You think about in the history of the world, billions and billions of children, and all of a sudden we have to have that vitamin K shot.
Yeah.
But they call it a vitamin K, but they should say, that mercury shot or that aluminum shot.
It's called what it is.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's a it's a conversation. It's a choice you have as a parent, and you deserve, first of all, to be educated on these things, and you deserve the respect from the obstetrician that you make the choices, not they don't make the choices. You make those choices about what happens. And if they won't agree with you, get a different obstetrician who will work with you.
I agree. Well, it's about education. You don't know what you don't know. I mean, you've raised 10 kids and 27 grandkids.
Yeah.
No, you don't know what you don't know. Thankfully, you had the chiropractic background, so you knew, not to inoculate your kids. And these parents today, I could not imagine having a baby today with everything that's thrown at you. You don't know. And then all the misinformation on the internet. I mean, 18 years ago, it was awesome. You could search something and you could find, a lot more than you can now because it's definitely censored. Even though we live in the United States of America, our internet is absolutely censored. And it's really sad. It's sad that parents can't get a hold of the information that they really deserve to get a hold of.
It really is. Unfortunately, the pediatrician's not going to tell them those things either.
Mm-mm. No, I believe strong gut, real food, time outside, like you said, getting dirty, sleep, having a calm home, those routines at night are important. I think those types of things, Dr. Harmon, I think those are the real immune boosters. I don't think you need to go get a synthetic immune booster, at the doctor's office and,
No.
and a shot injected into your system that we don't know what's going to do to your system. I think there's other ways to stay healthy, prevent illnesses, prevent infections that are unlikely to get. And if you do get it, your survival rate is really high.
Yeah, it's manageable with nutrition and love and attention.
I think that we've done a really good job with this 4-part series, going through the schedule, the ingredients of the vaccinations, the side effects, and the survival rate of infections. And then the wrap up today, alternative care, talking about the different doctors that you could go to, or don't go to a doctor. You don't run to the doctor at first sniffle. It always amazes me when I see, someone on Instagram or Facebook and little Johnny woke up with a fever. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon. Why? Fever's okay. I think that more moms need to just pause for a minute. Let's just go
They
back to
do.
basics.
And they've
Yeah.
got us so indoctrinated to freak out when my baby has a fever. Get the fever down. Don't give them Tylenol. Don't give them ibuprofen. Help them manage that. Give them some love. Cool washcloth. you'll be good.
Absolutely. We do have a holistic immune boosting guide for babies and toddlers that will be available in the show notes with the form submission as well. Dr. Harmon, is there anything else that you can think of that we didn't cover that we need to go over in our wrap up of the 4-part series for VAX FAX?
No, I think we did a thorough job. The moms just need to know you have your motherly instincts as well. Do not discount those when your child is sick. Just there's a certain amount of increase in fever for the length of time. And I don't know if you know this, but the brain damage that they talk about, temperature is 108.
Wow.
So when it gets up to 104, 105, your child is taking care of business. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Help them get the fever down, but remember, your body is raising the temperature to kill the stuff that's invading, not the child. It's appropriate. When a child has a fever, that is an appropriate response to turn up the heat and get the invaders out. So just keep that in mind.
You said something that made me think of. So the other day, someone posted on Facebook that their child had swollen lymph nodes and a fever. And I was like, that mumps. Do you know well, you do, of course you do. We talked about that, but that's the symptoms of mumps. That's any given Tuesday.
In the parotid glands, in the cheeks.
Right, right. So, but I mean, people could have something that could be classified as something and not even know it because they're just fighting it off and they'll get through it in a few days, and then they're on the other side of it. They have a stronger immune system and they're fine.
And hopefully our audience has already listened to the other episodes of the VAX FAX when we talk about those disorders and what they are. And they'll see that, it was 7 to 10 days of being sick. You either got a rash, a fever, and swollen lymph nodes, or you have swollen lymph nodes and a fever, or some variation of that, or sometimes diarrhea and vomiting. But parents, kids have been going through this for millions of years or thousands of years, whatever you believe in.
I just thought of something else I would like to touch on before we completely wrap up. Let's say there's parents out there that are listening. They've been going to the pediatrician and they want to ask questions. What type of questions should they be asking their pediatrician about vaccinations?
Well, it depends on how open their pediatrician is to being questioned.
Well, they'll find out real quick whether or not they want to stay with that pediatrician or not, if they're open to answering questions, or if they should find an alternative method like a functional medicine doctor or an HPATH.
Well, I would ask the pediatrician if he or she can tell me what the ingredients are in the vaccines. Mm-hmm. They'll probably get upset and then say, I have the right of informed consent. Can you tell me what some of the possible side effects are of these vaccines? Can you tell me what's in them? May I see the vaccine insert? Mm-hmm. If they refuse that, walk out. Mm-hmm. Because that pediatrician is one of those pediatricians who's more interested in the up to $1 million they will receive from incentives from the insurance companies. They get paid for every vaccine, and they also get paid bonuses if they have a certain percentage of their practice that's vaccinated. So if you screw that percentage up, they will dismiss you from the practice. Find out if they're, you're in charge. It's your baby's life that's on the line. So you have the right to ask questions. May I see the vaccine insert? And can you give me something that will inform me of the possible side effects? No, I can't. Run. Get out.
You have options. And you were talking about earlier, moms have mommy guts for a reason. They need to trust their intuition. I see it all the time. I hear moms, I don't want to take Sally Sue to the well baby visit. I have this burning in my gut that's screaming at me that this isn't right. Well, then don't go. As we've discussed before, don't go. They are the moms. We are not here to diagnose or what's the other word I'm looking for, Dr. Harmon?
Treat.
Yeah, okay. We are not here to diagnose or treat. We are here to help educate, share our experiences, and Dr. Harmon's amazing knowledge from being a physician for 35 years. We want you to know that you can make an informed decision. You're the parent, the caregiver. If you've loved this episode, share it with another mom or family member that might be on the fence about vaccines. It's a huge topic. We know that it's a huge topic, but hopefully we've answered all the questions. I think that we've gone through, like you said, pretty thoroughly.
I love it. And it gives me a lot of satisfaction knowing that we have shared all of this information. And I hope that the moms, they're the front line, man. They are the guardian of the realm, that moms will share this information and protect their friends' children from the outcomes that happen and these lifelong problems that ensue from their babies getting these vaccines. It would bring me a lot of joy to know that thousands and thousands of children have been saved from these harmful, I call them the toxic shots.
I said that yesterday, Dr. Harmon. I was telling somebody about our podcast, and I said, look, if I could save one baby from a well baby visit, I did my job. That's what I'm here for. I feel like
absolutely.
we are here at a specific time right now in 2025 with everything that's going on in our government, RFK, and all the things that are being uncovered. We've talked about in our lifetime we didn't think we would see uncovered, and the truth is finally coming out, things that we've been screaming about for years. Moms are finally getting a voice. These moms that have been screaming for years, something happened to my son the day after the 2-month baby visit, something happened after my 4-month baby visit. They're finally getting acknowledged. They're finally getting the recognition that they've needed for so long. And hopefully we can save, like you said, hundreds and hundreds of babies from something happening to them by simply just switching doctors.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
All right, until next time, stay grounded, stay grateful, and keep your family thriving from the root cause.
Thanks for tuning in to Root Cause Holistic Health. We're here to help you uncover what's really going on and empower you to take the next step in your healing journey.
Whether you're a mom, a dad, or just someone ready to stop settling for Band-Aid fixes, we hope today's episode gave you something to think about.
If you found this episode valuable, do us a favor, share it with someone you love, and leave a review so we can reach more families like yours.
Make sure to hit follow so you don't miss next week's episode. We've got more honest conversations, practical tips, and root cause wisdom coming your way.
Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and most of all, stay connected to what truly matters.
We'll see you next time on Root Cause Holistic Health.